I still remember the exact moment my career ended. It wasn't during a meeting or a performance review. It was at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, in my boss's office, when she looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you take one more step toward that door, you're fired." And I didn't walk toward the door. I walked toward her, and I kissed her. What happened next destroyed everything I'd spent 15 years building, exposed secrets I didn't even know existed, and taught me that some lines, once crossed, redraw your entire life. This is that story. My name is Marcus, and at 38 years old, I thought I had it all figured out. I was the lead operations manager at Silverpoint Consulting, a mid-sized firm in Seattle that specialized in corporate restructuring. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to cover my mortgage, my daughter's college fund, and the life I'd carefully constructed after my divorce 3 years earlier. I wasn't chasing dreams anymore. I was chasing stability. And for a while, that felt like enough. Rebecca Shaw was my boss. She'd been with Silverpoint for nearly a decade, rising through the ranks to become the youngest regional director in the company's history. At 42, she had this presence that was hard to describe. Not intimidating exactly, but commanding. When Rebecca entered a room, conversations didn't stop, they just became more focused, more careful. She had dark hair she always wore pulled back, glasses she'd push up when she was thinking, and this way of listening that made you feel like every word you said actually mattered. People respected her. Some feared her. I fell somewhere in between. I'd worked under Rebecca for about 2 years. In that time, we'd developed what I thought was a solid professional relationship. She pushed me hard, expected perfection, but also trusted me with the firm's biggest clients. We'd spent countless late nights in conference rooms, hammering out proposals, fixing last-minute crises, celebrating wins with expensive coffee from the cafe downstairs. There were moments, I'll admit, where the boundary between professional and personal felt thin. A laugh that lasted too long. Eye contact that held a beat longer than necessary. But nothing ever happened. We were both too smart for that. Too careful. Or so I thought. The trouble started with the Hendricks account. Hendricks Manufacturing was our largest client, a multi-million-dollar contract that represented nearly 30% of our regional revenue. I'd been managing their account for 18 months, and everything had been smooth until their new CFO started asking questions. Deep questions. Questions about billing discrepancies, timeline inconsistencies, deliverables that didn't quite match the proposals. I assured Rebecca everything was fine. I assured myself everything was fine. But when you're moving fast, sometimes you miss things. And I'd missed something big. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Rebecca called me into her office. Her door was already closed, which was never a good sign. I walked in and she was standing by the window, arms crossed, looking out at the Seattle skyline. She didn't turn around when she spoke. "Marcus, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you authorize those consulting hours on the Hendricks account?" I felt my stomach drop. "Which hours?" I asked, buying time. "The ones from last quarter," she said, finally turning to face me. $47,000 in consulting fees for work that, according to their records, was never actually completed. The room suddenly felt smaller. I'd authorized those hours based on reports from our junior consultants, reports I trusted but never personally verified. "I signed off on them based on the team's submissions," I said carefully. Rebecca removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. "The team's submissions that no one can now locate. Marcus, Hendricks is threatening to pull the entire contract. They're talking about legal action. This could destroy us." The weight of what she was saying hit me like a physical thing. "I'll fix it," I said. "I'll go through every invoice, every hour. I'll find the documentation." "There's more," Rebecca said quietly, and something in her tone made my blood run cold. "There's an internal audit happening. Corporate sent someone. They'll be here Monday." An internal audit meant everything would be examined. Every decision I made. Every shortcut I'd taken. Every corner I'd cut to meet impossible deadlines. I sat down without being invited. "Rebecca, I swear to you, I didn't knowingly approve fraudulent hours. If there's an error, it was an honest mistake." She looked at me for a long moment. "I want to believe that, Marcus. I really do. But right now, belief doesn't matter. Evidence matters. And we don't have any. I didn't know it yet, but someone else had already decided our fate. Someone who'd been watching, waiting, planning this moment for longer than either of us realized. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. The next 72 hours became a race against time. I stayed late every night, combing through records, trying to piece together what had happened. The junior consultants who'd submitted the original reports had moved on, their notes vague, the backup documentation incomplete. Every avenue I pursued led to a dead end. By Friday, I was exhausted and no closer to answers. Rebecca had been in meetings with corporate all week. I barely saw her except in passing, and when our eyes met, I saw something I'd never seen before. Worry. Real worry. That's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about both of us. About the entire regional office. About everything we'd built. Friday night, around 10 p.m., most of the office had cleared out. I was still at my desk, staring at my computer screen, when I got a message from Rebecca. My office. Now. I grabbed my coffee, cold by now, and headed down the hallway. Her door was slightly open. I knocked anyway. Come in, she said. I stepped inside and she closed the door behind me. The sound of it clicking shut felt final somehow. She didn't sit. Neither did I. I spent 3 hours on the phone with corporate today, she said. They want someone to take responsibility for this. They want a name. My name, I said. It wasn't a question. She nodded slowly. The audit starts Monday. If they find what I think they're going to find, you'll be terminated. Possibly worse. Possibly worse. She meant legal action. Lawsuits. The end of my career in this industry. I thought about my daughter, about her tuition bills, about the mortgage payment due in 2 weeks. What if I resign? I asked. What if I just walk away before the audit? Rebecca shook her head. That makes you look guilty. And it doesn't stop the audit. They'll still investigate. And without you here to defend yourself, the narrative becomes whatever they want it to be. I felt trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. So what do? I asked, and I hated how helpless I sounded. Rebecca finally sat down, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked tired. Not just physically tired, but emotionally exhausted. I've been thinking about that, she said quietly. There might be a way to buy us time. To delay the audit until we can find the real documentation or figure out what actually happened. I leaned forward. How? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw something shift in her expression. Corporate has certain blind spots. Personal matters, HR issues, they get handled differently, slower, more carefully. It took me a moment to understand what she was implying. You want to file an HR complaint? I asked. Not file, she said carefully. But if there were concerns about workplace conduct, about the relationship between a supervisor and an employee, that would trigger a different kind of investigation. One that would take precedence over a financial audit. I stared at her. You're talking about us. She met my eyes. I'm talking about creating a complication that buys us time. The idea was insane. And desperate. And it might actually work. But it would also mean exposing something that didn't exist. Creating a fiction that could damage both our reputations. I can't ask you to do that, I said. You're not asking, Rebecca replied. I'm offering. Because I know you, Marcus. I know you didn't do this intentionally, and I'm not going to let them destroy you over a bureaucratic nightmare. There was something in her voice, something beyond professional loyalty. I'd heard it before, in those late nights, in those too long glances. This could hurt you too, I said. It will hurt me, she admitted. But I can survive it. I have seniority, history with this company. You don't. She was willing to sacrifice her reputation to save mine. The realization hit me hard. We sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then Rebecca stood up and walked to her desk. Think about it over the weekend, she said. We'll talk Monday morning before the audit team arrives. I nodded and stood to leave. I made it halfway to the door before I stopped. Something in me knew that if I walked out of that office, if I let her carry this alone, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Not because of the job. Not because of the audit, but because in that moment, I realized something I'd been avoiding for 2 years. I turned around. "Rebecca," I said. She looked up from her desk. I took a step toward her. "Don't," she said, but her voice was soft, not commanding. "If you take one more step toward that door, you're fired," she said, trying to redirect me, trying to lighten the moment. But I wasn't walking toward the door. I took another step toward her. "Marcus," she said, and this time it was a warning, a real one. But I was done pretending, done hiding behind professionalism and appropriate boundaries. I crossed the space between us and I kissed her. For a second, maybe two, she was perfectly still. Then she kissed me back. Her hand came up to my face, my arm wrapped around her waist, and for those few precious seconds, nothing else existed. Not the audit, not the job, not the consequences. Just us. Then reality crashed back in. We broke apart at the same time, both of us breathing hard, both of us looking at each other like we'd just done something we could never undo. Because we had. "We can't," Rebecca said, but she didn't move away. "I know," I said, but I didn't either. Then we heard it. A faint sound. Electronic. A notification. Rebecca's computer screen had gone dark, the screensaver on. But her phone, sitting on her desk, lit up. A new email. She picked it up, her face going pale as she read. She turned the screen toward me without a word. The email had no subject line, no sender name I recognized, just an attachment. A photo. And in that photo was us. Timestamped from 17 minutes ago. The angle was from above, from the corner of the room. Security camera position. The image was clear enough to identify us, clear enough to see exactly what we'd done. Below the photo was a single line of text. "You have until Monday morning to resign. Both of you. Or this goes to corporate and the media." My hands went numb. "Who sent this?" I asked. Rebecca was already typing, checking the sender's email address. It was a dummy account, untraceable without IT help. "Someone who has access to security footage," she said, her voice tight. "Someone who's been watching." The implication settled over us like ice water. This wasn't random. Someone had been waiting for this. Someone had wanted this to happen. And I couldn't shake the feeling that we just walked straight into a trap that had been set months ago. We stood there in her office, the weight of what had just occurred pressing down on us. Not just the kiss, but the photograph, the threat, the deadline. "We need to figure out who sent this," I said. Rebecca nodded slowly. "And we need to do it before Monday." It was Friday night. We had roughly 60 hours. I thought about calling the police, but what would we report? A threatening email with a photo of us violating company policy? We'd be incriminating ourselves. "This person wants us gone," Rebecca said, thinking out loud. "Both of us." Why? That was the question that kept circling in my mind. Who benefited from both of us leaving Silverpent? We spent the next hour making a list. Colleagues who'd been passed over for promotions. Employees Rebecca had disciplined or fired. Clients who might have grudges. The list was longer than I wanted to admit. "We need to access the security system," Rebecca said. "Find out who pulled that footage." I checked my watch. It was almost midnight. "The security office will be empty, but the system requires administrator access." Rebecca gave me a look. "I'm a regional director. I have administrator access." We left her office together, moving quietly through the empty hallways. The building felt different at night, shadows longer, sounds sharper. We took the elevator down to the basement level where the security office was located. Rebecca used her keycard to unlock the door. Inside, a wall of monitors displayed various camera feeds from throughout the building. She sat down at the main terminal and logged in. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. "Here," she said, pulling up the footage from her office. We watched ourselves, the conversation, the moment I turned around, the kiss. Seeing it from that angle made it feel more real and more surreal at the same time. "The footage was accessed at 10:52 p.m., Rebecca said, checking the system logs. "About 20 minutes before I got the email." She pulled up the access records. "Someone logged in remotely, using my credentials." My heart sank. "Your credentials? How is that possible?" Rebecca's face was grim. "Either someone stole my password, or someone high enough up in the company has override access. We were looking at two very different scenarios. One meant we were dealing with a tech-savvy employee with a grudge. The other meant we were dealing with someone in senior leadership, someone with power. "Can you trace the remote login?" I asked. She tried, but the connection had been routed through a VPN. "Masked, professional. Whoever this is, they know what they're doing," Rebecca said. We left the security office with more questions than answers. The weekend stretched ahead of us, and every hour that passed felt like one less chance to fix this. I went home that night, but I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about who would want both of us gone. Rebecca had made enemies, sure. She was tough, demanded excellence, didn't tolerate mediocrity. But nothing that would warrant this kind of targeted attack. Unless it wasn't about her personality. Unless it was about something else, something bigger. Something that connected back to the Hendricks account and the audit that started all of this. Saturday morning, I got a call from Rebecca. "I think I know who it is," she said without preamble. "Meet me at the office in an hour." When I arrived, she was already in the conference room, files spread out across the table. "Remember the Hendricks account issue?" she asked. "The one that started all of this?" I nodded. "What if it's connected?" She showed me a file. 3 months ago, I fired someone from the finance department, Michael Torres. He was caught falsifying expense reports. Small amounts, but consistent. I reported it to corporate, and they terminated him. "What does that have to do with Hendricks?" I asked. Rebecca pulled out another document. Michael processed invoices for the Hendricks account. He had access to all the billing records. If he wanted to create a discrepancy, plant evidence of wrongdoing, he could have done it before he left. The pieces started clicking together. So he sets me up to take the fall for billing fraud, knowing it would trigger an audit. And then, Rebecca continued, he waits. Watches the security feeds remotely using credentials he might have stolen before he was terminated. Waits for one of us to slip up. "But why both of us?" I asked. "Why not just target you since you fired him?" Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm not enough. If I go down, someone else just takes my position. But if both of us leave, especially under scandal, it creates chaos, undermines confidence in the entire regional office, maybe even creates opportunities for him elsewhere or settles some deeper grudge." It made a sick kind of sense. "We need proof," I said. "An accusation isn't enough. We need evidence that he accessed the system, that he manipulated the Hendricks records." Rebecca had already thought of that. "I have a contact in IT, someone I trust. I called him this morning. He's meeting us here in 20 minutes. When the IT specialist arrived, a quiet guy named David who'd been with the company for years, we explained the situation. Not all of it. Just enough. We told him we suspected a former employee had accessed the security system illegally. David worked for 3 hours, tracing digital footprints, checking access logs, comparing timestamps. Finally, he found it. "Here," David said, pointing to his screen. "These access attempts came from an external IP address. Same IP that was registered to a Michael Torres during his employment." "That's him," Rebecca said. "But we need more," David said. "IP addresses can be spoofed. We need to connect him to the Hendricks discrepancies." That was harder. The financial records were complicated, and Michael had been careful. But he hadn't been perfect. David found small inconsistencies in metadata. Files that had been modified after Michael's termination date but using login credentials that should have been deactivated. "He kept a backdoor," David said. "After he was fired, he still had access. He's been in the system for months." By Sunday afternoon, we had enough. Not enough for criminal charges maybe, but enough to take to corporate. Enough to prove that Michael Torres had been manipulating records and surveilling employees. Rebecca composed an email to the head of corporate security, attaching all the evidence David had found. She scheduled it to send Monday morning at 8 a.m., 1 hour before the audit was set to begin. "What about the photo?" I asked. "What about the threat?" Rebecca looked at me steadily. "We could still lose our jobs over this. What we did violated company policy. Even if we expose Michael, that doesn't erase the photo." I'd been thinking about that all weekend. "Then we tell the truth," I said. "We admit what happened. We own it. We don't let him use it as blackmail. Rebecca considered this. If we come forward first, we control the narrative. It's not a scandal if we're honest about it. We decided to include a separate statement in the email to corporate, a confession of sorts, an acknowledgement that we'd crossed a professional boundary, that we took full responsibility, and that we understood there would be consequences. But we also made it clear that this didn't change the evidence against Michael Torres, that his actions were separate and criminal. It was the hardest email I'd ever helped write, admitting to something that could end my career. But it was also the most honest thing I'd done in years. Monday morning arrived too fast. I got to the office at 7 a.m. Rebecca was already there. We met in her office one last time before the audit team showed up. "Are you ready?" she asked. I thought about everything we'd been through in the past 72 hours. The fear, the investigation, the choices we'd made. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. At 8 a.m., the email sent. At 8:30, corporate security called Rebecca's office. By 9 a.m., the audit was postponed. By 10 a.m., Michael Torres was in custody, escorted from his apartment by corporate investigators and local police on charges of unauthorized system access and fraud. But the day wasn't over. At 11 a.m., Rebecca and I were called into a conference room. The regional VP was there, along with someone from Human Resources. They'd read our statement. They'd seen the photo. "What you two did was inappropriate and violated company policy," the VP said. "Under normal circumstances, this would result in immediate termination." I braced myself. "However," the VP continued, "given the circumstances, given the fact that you came forward voluntarily and that you helped expose a serious security breach, we're willing to offer an alternative. Marcus, you'll be transferred to our Portland office. Different region, different supervisor. Rebecca, you'll remain here but you'll be under formal review for 6 months." It wasn't ideal, but it wasn't termination either. We'd been given a second chance. A complicated, messy, difficult second chance. "Do you accept these terms?" the VP asked. I looked at Rebecca. She looked at me. We both nodded. "We accept," Rebecca said. The meeting ended. We walked out of the conference room together, knowing it was probably the last time we'd work in the same office. "So," I said. "Portland. It's not that far," Rebecca replied. "About 3 hours." We stood there in the hallway, other employees passing by, the office returning to its normal rhythm. "What do we do now?" I asked. Rebecca smiled, sad but genuine. "We survive. We move forward. And maybe, when enough time has passed, we figure out what this actually was." She was right. There was no easy answer, no clean resolution. But we were both still here, still employed, still alive in a sense. "Can I call you?" I asked. "When I get to Portland?" She thought about it for a moment. "Give it time, Marcus. Let things settle. Then yes. Call me." I nodded. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined, but it was an ending I could live with. 6 months later, I was settled in Portland. The work was different, the people were different, but I was good at my job and I'd rebuilt some of the credibility I'd lost. Rebecca and I had texted occasionally, brief updates, nothing heavy. Then one Friday evening my phone rang. It was her. "Hey," she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "How's Portland treating you?" We talked for 2 hours that night. About work, about life, about everything that had happened. At the end of the call, she said something that surprised me. "I'm thinking about taking a vacation, somewhere different. Have you explored much of Oregon?" "A little," I said, my heart beating faster. "I could show you around if you want." "I'd like that," she said. 2 weeks later, Rebecca came to Portland. We spent the weekend exploring the city, hiking in the gorge, talking about everything except work. It felt different now. No power imbalance, no company policies, just two people who'd been through something intense and come out the other side. On Sunday night, we had dinner at a small restaurant overlooking the river. "I never apologized," Rebecca said suddenly. "For what?" I asked. "For putting you in that position. For suggesting we manipulate the situation with HR. That was wrong of me." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You were trying to protect me. And honestly, I don't think I would have fought as hard to clear my name if you hadn't believed in me." She squeezed my hand. Do you ever regret it? That night in my office? I thought about it. The kiss that had started everything. No, I said honestly. I regret the circumstances. I regret that we got caught, that someone tried to use it against us. But I don't regret the kiss itself. It was the most honest thing I'd done in years. Rebecca's eyes glistened slightly. Me too. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Long distance at first, alternating weekends, phone calls that stretched into the early morning. After a year, Rebecca applied for a position at a different consulting firm, one with an office in Portland. She got the job. We got an apartment together 6 months after that. It wasn't fast, but it was right. We built something new, something that wasn't tangled up in office politics and power dynamics, something clean. 2 years after that terrible weekend, we got married. Small ceremony, close friends and family. My daughter was there, happy to see me happy. During the reception, Rebecca pulled me aside. Do you remember what you said that night? When you kissed me? I shook my head. You didn't say anything, she said. But your eyes did. They said I'm tired of pretending, and I think that's when I knew. That's when I knew we'd figure this out somehow. Looking back now, I don't tell people we fell in love at work. That makes it sound simple, romantic even. What really happened was messier than that. We made mistakes. We crossed lines. We almost lost everything. But we also fought for each other when it mattered. We told the truth when lying would have been easier. And we learned that sometimes the right person comes into your life at exactly the wrong time, and you have to decide whether to walk away or fight for it. We chose to fight. Michael Torres was prosecuted for fraud and unauthorized access to computer systems. He served 18 months. I don't think about him often, but when I do, I wonder what he was really after. Revenge? Justice? Or just the satisfaction of watching people fall? I'll never know. What I do know is that his attempt to destroy us ended up forcing us to be honest with ourselves and each other. In a strange way, he gave us permission to stop hiding. So here's what I want you to think about. Have you ever been in a situation where doing the right thing felt impossible? Where every choice seemed wrong? What did you do? Did you walk away or did you step forward knowing the cost? And if you were in my position, standing in that office with everything on the line, what would you have done? Would you have kissed her? Would you have fought back? Or would you have accepted defeat and walked away? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories because I think we've all been there in some way. We've all faced moments where the safe path and the honest path split in different directions. And the choice we make in those moments, that defines us more than we realize. If this story stayed with you, if it made you think about your own life, your own choices, hit that subscribe button. Because stories like this, stories about real people facing impossible situations, those are the stories that matter. Those are the stories that remind us we're not alone in this mess we call life. Thank you for listening. And whatever you're facing right now, whatever line you're standing at, I hope you have the courage to step forward when it counts. Because the choices we make when everything is on the line, that's who we really are.